Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today's topic is on the portion of Terumah, which is this week's Parsha, in which the Torah tells us about the commandment that God gave to the Jewish people to construct the Mishkan, the Tabernacle, the portable temple that was built by the Jewish people and Moshe in the desert, that they traveled with them till they reached the land of Israel. Once they got to the land of Israel, they already built a more permanent situation in a number of places, first in Nov, and then in Gibeon, and then finally in the city of Shiloh, which they built a permanent temple out of stone, which lasted for 369 years. Eventually, the permanent temple in Jerusalem was built by King David and Solomon mainly. King David set it in motion, made the plans and so on, and it was finally built in the days of Shlomo HaMelech, of Solomon, who spent an enormous amount of money and effort on building the house of God in the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Now, we go back to the temple, to the tabernacle in the desert, which is the subject of this week's portion. In the portion, the Torah lays out for us all the different materials that we use in the construction of the temple, of the tabernacle. And we find that of the main materials, sorry about that, of the main materials were gold, silver, and copper. There were other materials as well, but those were the main materials that we used in the construction of the temple. Now we know that the temple in the desert is the commandment to build the temple is in the beginning of this parsha. It says, "Va'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'seichem." You shall make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell within it. Now, if you will pay attention in this verse, the sanctuary is not called Mishkan, it is called Mikdash. Although in the rest of the portion and in the rest of the book of Exodus till the end, when they finally build it and erect it, it's called Mishkan. But in the actual verse that commands us to build it, it is called Mikdash. And the word Mikdash, we know, is we call the final temple in Jerusalem, we call Beis HaMikdash, because in the commandment to build it, it uses the word Mikdash. Mikdash means, of course, the holy sanctuary. And our rabbis tell us something very interesting, that the names Mishkan and Mikdash are interchangeable. Sometimes it's called Mishkan, sometimes it's called Mikdash, and they both resemble each other. Things that were done in the Mishkan were later done in the Beis HaMikdash. Things that were later done in the Beis HaMikdash were also done, were a copy or resembled that which was done in the Mishkan. And therefore, this begs the question. We know that in the Beis HaMikdash, when Solomon built the temple many, many years later, we're told that he spent fortunes of money. He tried to make it in the most elaborate way. He didn't. There was, as the language. In fact, the Mishnah tells us that every morning they would offer a korban tamid, the daily sacrifice in the morning. Now, the daily sacrifice in the morning, you had to slaughter it on the altar, and after they slaughtered it, they flayed it, they skinned it, they took off the skin, and they prepared it certain parts were brought onto the altar. So the Mishnah tells us that in order to make the skinning, to remove the skin from the animal easier, they would first give the animal, before they slaughtered it, they would give it to drink a lot. And the Mishnah tells us that the vessel with which they used to give the animal to drink was made out of pure gold.
Wow.
Pure gold. Now think about this. This means that not only the Beis Hamikdash itself was made out of the most elaborate materials, gold, but even the secondary, the things that you don't need for the service itself. You're giving the animal to drink to make the flaying and the skinning easier. Even then, they used only gold. And the Mishnah, and as the rabbis tell us, Ein anius b'mokum ashir. The question is, why do you spend money on the cups? Take a styrofoam cup. There were no styrofoam cups then. Glass cups, metal cups. You have to waste money on cups? It's one thing you want to build the altar for God out of gold. You want to build other things out of gold to make it beautiful. But the cups they use to drink, to give the animal to drink, like who cares what they use? Why was it necessary to spend so much money on using gold? And the answer the rabbis give, Ein anius b'mokem ashirus. In a place of wealth, in the Beis Hamikdash where God is residing, in a palace, they don't use junk. No matter what it's for. You're not going to find secondary materials in a palace. So Solomon adapted the same idea. This is God's house. The brooms are going to be made out of gold. Not just the mizbeach and the menorah and the walls and everything else, but the things that are in the storage room are all made out of gold. The cup they used to give the animal to drink is gold. So if that's the case, that was the attitude in the building of the Beis Hamikdash, why did they not have the same attitude when they built the Mishkan? They should have used only gold.
And they had a lot.
And they had a lot of gold. There was no problem with gold. In fact, if you want to say that they didn't have enough gold, that can't be, because the Medrash tells us that the Jewish people possessed then all the gold in the world. They had amassed incredible amounts in the fortunes of gold. So there was no shortage of gold. So why did they use other materials, copper? You want to say you wanted to use silver because there's certain beauty in silver over gold, you can make that argument. But why copper? Copper is a very low grade material. Why add that and bring that into the temple? It's a good question. To answer this question, I will elaborate on a very interesting dispute, difference of opinion brought in the Talmud and other places regarding the construction of the Mishkan. There is a difference of opinion. There are three opinions as to when did God give the commandment to make the Mishkan, and when did they actually donate the money for the Mishkan. Does anyone, when they made the Mishkan? So here's the chronology. What? Mm-hmm. The chronology was as follows. The Jewish people got the Torah at Mount Sinai on the 6th day of Sivan. Correct?
Yeah.
Moses went up for 40 days. Sivan 6.
No, I mean the erected Mishkan Nisan 8.
It was erected a year later on Nisan 1. The beginning of Nisan. But they were at Mount Sinai the 6th of Sivan. Moses went up for 40 days till the 17th of Tammuz, which he came down with the first tablets and broke them, because the Jews had made a terrible sin the day before and worshipped the golden calf. Then he went up for another 40 days to ask Hashem for forgiveness. And then he went up for a third 40 days to get the second tablets, and he came down when? On Yom Kippur, with the second tablets, and that was the day that God told Moshe, you are forgiven for the Jewish people are forgiven for the terrible sin of the golden calf.
Talking about gold. It was surplus of gold.
Right. So that was the chronology of when, and then after Yom Kippur, they built the Mishkan. But the question is, when did God give them the commandment to build the Mishkan? We know when they actually built it. They definitely built it after Yom Kippur. But when were they commanded to give to build it and donate the money for it? And when did the Jewish people actually make the contributions? So there are three opinions. One opinion is the one brought in the Zohar that says that God commanded and the Jewish people donated the whole money before the whole story with the golden calf. That means during those 40 days God commanded Moshe to make the Mishkan, or right by Matan Torah, and he already told them about it, and they got busy giving the money. And only after that did the story of the golden calf take place, and everything that followed. That's one opinion. And that's how the Zohar also explains why the Torah says that when the Jewish people donated the money, the gold, for the golden calf, it says they had to take off their jewelry. And the Zohar asked, why do they have to take off the jewelry? They had so much gold. The answer is they already gave it all away to the Mishkan. So there was nothing left, only that was hanging on their ears and on their rings and on their noses and so on and so forth, the jewelry. That's one opinion. The other opinion is that which is brought in the Medrash, that it all happened after Yom Kippur. That this golden calf and the forgiveness and the second tablets were given all after Yom Kippur, is when God gave the commandment to build to go and collect the money and build the Mishkan. And why after the Yom Kippur, after the second tablets? So that the whole world will know that God forgave the Jewish people when they built for him a sanctuary and he's ready to rest among them again. That will be the witness, the testimony that God forgave them. So that's why he gave the commandment after they made the mistake of the golden calf and after they were forgiven for the golden calf. And that was, the Mishkan was meant to be a sign that God forgave them. That's the second opinion, that everything will happen after Yom Kippur. Then there's a third opinion. The third opinion is that the commandment to make the Mishkan was before the golden calf, but the actual contributions happened after Yom Kippur. That means the commandment was there all this time, but the actual giving of the money and the construction took place after Yom Kippur, after the whole story of the second tablets and the forgiveness and so on and so forth. Now we know in the Torah, when you have a dispute between the rabbis, the sages, it's not that one is right and the other is wrong. We have the famous statement, Eilu ve'eilu divrei Elokim chayim. These and these are the words of the living God, meaning they're all right. Although in the physical world only one way could have actually happened and transpired, but in some spiritual realm, in some spiritual meaning of all of this, they're all right. There's something there that we can learn from all these three opinions that we can apply in our life. So let's try to make sense of all of this. What's the difference between these three opinions? What lies at the heart of this argument? What was the difference between the Jewish people's state after Matan Torah and after Yom Kippur? A very big difference. After Matan Torah, they were all tzaddikim. They were all at the level of righteous individuals. They were tzaddikim. They were perfectly righteous. It says that the Jewish people, when they came out of Egypt, even though in Egypt they were not tzaddikim, it says that they were some of them were idol worshippers. But after they left Egypt and they came to Matan Torah, it says over there they were all converted. They went through a conversion of sorts. And what's the law when a person converts? The Talmud tells us that a convert is kikotten shenoilad, is like a child that is born. It's like a brand new child. When a convert converts, it says that he starts, when we say Tillim every day for the corresponding to our years, right? Mm-hmm. If you're 30, you say Tehillim 31. When you turn 31, you start saying 32, right? Every day. So a convert who converted when he was 40 years old. So let's say today someone who's 40 converted to Judaism. What kapitel Tehillim does he say? One. Yeah. He's a brand newborn child. Yeah.
It's not gouging for one and...
That's his spiritual birth. That's his birthday. He's a newborn. So the Jewish people were brand newborns by Matan Torah. So their whole past was wiped away. It was completely wiped away. It was completely wiped away. So what was their state? They were perfect. They were clean like a newborn child at tzaddik. In other words, and then they sinned, right? When they sinned, they became sinful, Rishoyim. They fell into the level of a Rasha,
normal people,
of a sinful people. Then came forgiveness in Yom Kippur. After Yom Kippur, God forgave the Jewish people. So what were they, and what state were they after Yom Kippur? Baal Tshuva. They were a Baal Tshuva. They did teshuvah for the terrible sin of the golden calf, and God forgave them. So now they were at the spiritual state of a penitent, of a Baal Tshuva. So after Matan Torah, again, they were tzaddikim. Then they became Rishoyim. And then, after Yom Kippur, they were Baalei Tshuva. Okay? And this is the reason for the dispute between the Zohar, the Medrash, and the third opinion. According to the Zohar, the Zohar says, that the commandment to build a Mishkan and the contributions that the Jewish people made for the building of the Mishkan, because who actually built the Mishkan? A few people. The involvement of the whole Jewish people in the Mishkan was mainly in the contributions that they made. So the involvement of the Jewish people, the commandment and their involvement in the contribution, all happened when they were tzaddikim, before the golden calf. That means, according to the Zohar, the job of building a Mishkan happens mainly through tzaddikim. To build a sanctuary for God can happen through tzaddikim, through righteous people. According to the Medrash says, when did they actually build the Mishkan? And when did God actually give the whole commandment and the contributions were all after Moses came down, after Yom Kippur. According to the Medrash, in other words, the Mishkan was built through Baalei Tshuva. In other words, according to the Medrash, who can build a Mishkan for God? People that were sinful once and they did Tshuva, they can now build a Mishkan for God. And the third opinion, when was the commandment given? Before the golden calf. When was the actual contributions done? After they became Baalei Tshuva. Now let me ask you a question. Let's understand this. God gives them the commandment when? God gave them the commandment right after the Torah was given. So they were perfect tzaddikim. Then they sinned. They fell and they sinned. They descended in their spiritual level. They became sinful Rishoyim. Did they still have that commandment to build a Mishkan? Or was the commandment nullified?
No, it was commandment.
It was still a commandment. They still had the commandment. Even as sinful people, they still had the commandment to go ahead and build a Mishkan. When did they actually do it? After they became Baalei Tshuva. Right? But the commandment was still there in effect when they were Rishoyim. That means, according to the third opinion, because if it would not have been in effect anymore, that means like this. You can say, theoretically, you can say, no, God gave the commandment to tzaddikim. But when they sinned the golden calf, he's not interested in their temple anymore. But if that was the case, then later when they became Baalei Tshuva and they repented, he would have had to give a new commandment. But he didn't give a new commandment. That means the original commandment was still in effect. That means that original commandment was in effect even when they were Rishoyim. And what this means is, according to this opinion, a Rasha can also build a Beis HaMikdash for God. Are you with me? Tamivin? Now, we said that all three opinions are right. What's the lesson from this? Many people make the mistake, a tzaddik can make a mistake thinking, listen, I'm a tzaddik. I'm a person that is completely righteous. I don't have any sin. I have no yetzer hara for sin. As the Alter Rebbe explains in the Tanya, that the real tzaddik means that he doesn't even have a desire for sin. He has no yetzer hara at all. He has no evil inclination. And therefore, he can say to himself, what's that? He can say to himself, I have to get busy with building a Beis HaMikdash. I have to get busy. What's a Beis HaMikdash? A place you have to deal with the physical, bring animals as sacrifices, transform the whole world from a physical place to make it a godly place, to bring God down to earth, and to sanctify the world around me. The whole physical realm should become sanctified. I don't have to do that. I'm a person that has absolutely no connection to the physical world. It doesn't impress me. It doesn't drag me. I don't have to worry about sin, and therefore I don't have to worry about transforming. What's the idea of turning the world around and making it a godly place? So that you don't sin with it. Right? It's to keep you away from sin, so utilize those physical things for something holy. But a tzaddik can think to himself, I'm not attracted to sin anyway. So I don't have to worry about getting involved with Hashem's, with physical, transforming the world and making up a holy temple for God and sanctifying the world. I can sit in my attic, learn all day Torah, deal with the spiritual levels that I can climb and rise and reach more and more. That's my life. I'll leave this sanctification of the physical world for people that deal with the physical world, that the physical world impresses them, affects them. They need that service. I don't. So the Zohar tells him, no. You also you have to engage in the physical world, sanctifying it and making it a holy place for God. Why is that? The question is why. The tzaddik is right. Seemingly he's right. He's a person that has the physical world has no effect on him. The answer is as follows. The tzaddik has to eat. Tzaddik also has to eat. He is a physical body after all. He's not an angel. He has to eat food, and he has to drink, and he has to sleep, and he has to do many other things in this physical world that he lives. So he has a connection to the physical. If he's not going to make certain that his physical, everything that he does is holy, and intentionally, in other words, he should engage in sanctifying the world around him, it's very possible that although he thinks he doesn't have a yetzer hara and he doesn't, but dealing with the physical world can drag you down. Even if you don't have a yetzer hara, it introduces you to the realm of the physical. Once you're introduced into the realm of the physical, who knows what follows? So even a tzaddik needs that protection. Even a tzaddik needs to make sure that when he is engaged in this physical world, that he sanctifies it, makes it a holy place. The building of the Mishkan is also the work of a tzaddik. Then we go to the Baal Tshuva. Baal Tshuva can think. He can also make a mistake thinking what? I don't have to make a Beis HaMikdash. I don't have to engage in all of this and sanctifying and transforming and making holy. He says the physical world, what is a Baal Tshuva? You know what the spiritual passion of a Baal Tshuva is? When a person sinned and he really feels bad about it, and he wants to repent and do the right thing and become closer to God, the experience of sin makes him abhor sin. Right? Meaning, once you desire to become closer to God, since you know how bad sin is, you run away from it. But like from fire. So he can think to himself, the physical, unholy part of the world is disgusting to me. I run away from it. I'll never be influenced by it again. It's something that I distance myself completely from it. In my tshuva to Hashem, am I getting closer to God? Because I experienced and I know how bad it is, that's why I run away from it. That's what the Baal Tshuva is. He leaves the sin completely behind. He not only he leaves it behind, but he flees from sin. So a person that flees from sin can think to himself, I don't have to engage in the sanctification. What's the sanctification of the world? Again, let me re-emphasize, the sanctification of the world is because if you don't sanctify the world, you can become enmeshed in the world. And the world begins to take you over. He says the world can't take me over. I run away from it. I want no connection to it. So let the tzaddikim deal with the world. Let someone else deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with the world. In other words, on the contrary, he says to himself, the world is a messy place. I don't want to be part of it. I'm scared to deal with it, he can say to himself. I already tasted what the world is like. It pulled me down already once. I don't want it to pull me down a second time. Let me run away from it.
It's impossible.
But the answer is, that's what the Medrash tells us. Now, when was the Mishkan made? After Yom Kippur. After the Jews became Baal Tshuva. That the Mishkan was made by Baal Tshuvas mainly. They're the ones that really made the Mishkan. Maybe because they were Baal Tshuva. Maybe they're the experts in knowing how to transform. Maybe that's why God wants Dafkid intentionally the Baal Tshuva to make the Mishkan. They know the world. They know it all too well. They've been there, right? So maybe they know how to manipulate it. So we need them. On the other hand, the Rasha can think, the sinful person can think, I certainly can't engage in making a... Who am I to engage in making a Mishkan? I'm a sinful person. You have to at least do tshuva. Before I can make a Mishkan, I have to engage in full repentance. A Rasha can think, I can't make a Mishkan for God. I can't make a sanctuary for God. I'm a bad person. Not a bad person, but I'm a sinful person. First I have to do tshuva. And my tshuva has to be accepted completely by God, where God tells me, I forgave you. And then you can engage. So the third opinion tells us, the commandment to make a Beis HaMikdash was not only to tzaddikim, and not only to Baal Tshuvas, but also it was in effect. It remained in effect even when the Jews were sinful. In such a sin as the golden calf, even they were commanded to make a Mishkan. So the bottom line is, to sum this up, the mitzvah of making a Beis HaMikdash was not only for tzaddikim, not only for Baal Tshuvas, but even for Rishonim. And not only for Rishonim and Baal Tshuvas, but even for tzaddikim. And not only for tzaddikim and Rishonim, but even for everyone had to be part of it. You may ask, how does a sinful person really engage in making a Beis HaMikdash? How is he going to accomplish this? It's like when you tell the law is that the Alter Rebbe says in the laws of Torah study that everyone is commanded to learn Torah, even a sinful person. Now you would think that a sinful person should not have this command. Because what can happen? A sinful person learns Torah, he can abuse the Torah. He can misrepresent it, misunderstand it, turn it upside down. So the Alter Rebbe says, no, even he should learn Torah. Why? Because the luminary, the Torah's light, the godliness of the Torah will certainly have a positive effect on him. The same thing with the sinful person engaging in the building in sanctifying the world. The holiness of the mitzvahs that he does and the sanctification of the world that he's engaged in, that alone will affect him to make him a mensch. So everyone has to engage in making a Beis HaMikdash. Not only the holy, not only the Baal Tshuva, everyone. And it's interesting to note that in what was the main part of the Beis HaMikdash, when you walked into the Mishkan, what was the holiest part of the Mishkan? Who knows? It was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. And what was in the Holy of Holies? The Ark. What was the Ark? It's interesting. In the Ark, in this one most important item of the whole temple, what it was in the ark, you had like this. You had the pieces of the broken tablets. What were the broken tablets? They were the first tablets, right? They were the tablets that were given to the Jewish people when they were still tzaddikim. But on the other hand, they're already broken. What does the breaking of those tablets represent? That they sinned, that they were sinful. That's why he broke it. And what else was in those tablets? The second tablets in the ark were the set of the second tablets. So all three aspects of the Jewish people represented in that one ark, in the Holy of Holies. The first luchos, the broken first luchos, the first luchos, which is the state of tzaddikim, the broken first luchos, which represented the state of rishoyim, and the second luchos, which represented the state of the fact that they were all penitents, that they were all Baalei Tshuva. The ark had to have all three.
The Mishkan had the tablets before they were broken, and
no, they were broken before they actually built it.
Okay, so you're saying three. They had the broken.
They had the broken tablet, but what were the broken tablets? There were tablets the remains of the first tablet. That means that the tablets that were given to them as tzaddikim. On the other hand, they were already broken, which means that they represent the fact that they sinned. And then the third aspect was the new tablets, which represented their state of Baalei Tshuva. And now I want to sum this up. This is also why we needed to have in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Mishkan, all three materials in the building of it. Remember, we asked at the beginning, why did they have to build? Why didn't they just use gold, like in the second Beis Hamikdash? It was, the idea that in a palace you only have wealth, you don't use secondary or third grade materials. Why they use nacheshus, the copper and silver and gold? The answer is, and to sum it up quickly, gold, silver, and copper represent these three types of Jews. Briefly. It says that the silver represents tzaddikim. Yeah, silver represents tzaddikim. It says, I'll just share this with you. It says that gold is such a pure, such a high-level material that says the world was unqualified, was not worthy of using gold. means that gold is otherworldly a little bit. And that's why it says in the halacha that, I'm not going to get into the whole halachic issue, but it says that gold in certain aspects is inferior to silver because gold it's not easily exchanged. It's a currency that's not easily, it's not, the certain, like the dollar today. The dollar, you can use it anywhere in the world, right? But take other currencies, you can't use it everywhere. It's not an easy currency to exchange. Gold is not easy to use. It's not a common currency. Silver, on the other hand, is a common currency. And this is a reflection of their spiritual state. It says gold in its spiritual source is otherworldly. That's why it doesn't exchange well in this world. You can't use it really well in this world. Even in the physical, it's not something that people carry in their pocket all the time, right? Silver, on the other hand, is much easier to exchange. There's halachic ramifications for this. Which means, basically, that gold is a little otherworldly and silver is more connected to our world. The difference between a Baal Tshuva and a tzaddik is as follows. A tzaddik does mitzvahs and a Baal Tshuva does mitzvahs. What's the difference between the tzaddik's mitzvahs and the Baal Tshuva's mitzvahs? What is a Baal Tshuva? A Baal Tshuva is a person that fell. A person that sinned and he's working his way back to God. What do you have to do when you sin? What do you have to do to fix the damage you made? You have to recognize, first of all, that you have a negative a Yetzer Hara, and your nature is to pull you down, and you have to work with that nature. How do you work with that nature? You've got to elevate yourself and leave your nature, break your nature, elevate yourself and ascend upwards towards God. It means you have to leave a little bit this world. The world you're in. You have to exit the world you're in to find a new reality, a new identity. That's represented by gold. What's a tzaddik mitzvah? Tzaddik doesn't have to deal with negativity. He has no negativity. A tzaddik has no negative. So what does he do? He engages all the... His mitzvahs are about one thing. Bringing holiness into this world. He brings God down into this world. That's what his mitzvah. He puts on tefillin. He's bringing a revelation of God into this world. He's not worried about elevating anything. He doesn't have to elevate anything. So his avodah, his divine service is about bringing God into this world. Not bringing man up to God's world. It's the other way around. That's represented by silver, which is very worldly. Silver is part of our world. It's bringing holiness into this world. Gold represents bringing man up to God, otherworldly. Silver is this divine service of a tzaddik, which brings God into this world. That's why in the physical realm, silver is very common in this world. What's nechesh? Is copper. The third one is copper. Copper is a very low-grade material. That represents the Rosh. Here is something very interesting. Well, how do you say copper in Hebrew? Oren? Nechoshet. Necheshes. It comes from the same word as Nochosh. The snake. You remember the snake in Genesis?
Yeah.
The snake was the source of all sin. Is the source of all the problems that we have. The reason there is a Rasha in the world is because of the Nochash, Necheshes. Because of this copper. Because of the Nachash, which is the same root as the word copper. Copper is a low-grade material. It represents the lowliness of this world. Kesef, silver, represents the highest level of this world. The godliness of this world, which is what the tzaddik brings into this world. Zohav, gold, represents the Baal Tshuva, which exits this world, elevates himself from this world, because he has to find a new identity. This world is not good for him. He got pulled, the world for him was damaging. So he has to leave his identity and find a new identity. The tzaddik represents the highest and best part of this world, the godliness of this world, silver. The Rasha represents the lowliest part of this world. Nechesh is copper. And what's the lesson? It's people that think. I don't have to deal with necheshes, with people that sin. I don't want to deal with them. It's not my problem. They're second-grade people. I want to deal with them. The holy, the silver, the gold, if anything. Copper. The copper Jew is not for me. I don't want to waste time with them. They'll either drag me down, or it's just not something I want to do. I want to deal with holy things, with brilliant things, with gold, silver. Says the Mishnah Torah, if you want to have a Beis Hamikdash and the mitzvah of Osil Mikdash, the Shachanti B'Seichem, to make the words in the Torah in this week's portion, I want you to make for me a sanctuary and I will dwell in them. Doesn't say I will dwell in it, and we know what our rabbis tell us, that the reason it says in them is because this is a commandment for all Jews to make a mikdash in his heart, in his home. And God says, if you will do that, I will dwell in you. So if you want to succeed in fulfilling this mitzvah of bringing God into your life, you got to have necheshes. You have to bring the copper into that Beis Hamikdash. You simply cannot make a mishkan, a sanctuary for God, without copper. It won't have any validity. No validity at all. And even more, it says, interestingly, so there's no such thing, I don't want to have anything to do with people that sin, and I just want to be holy and run away from all this. You can't. If you want to have a mishkan in your heart, you want God in your life, you want a Beis Hamikdash where God resides in your home, in your life, you're going to have to bring in a copper Jew into your life. and work with him and turn him into a piece of gold, a piece of silver. And the Rebbe ends off saying something very interesting. This is all a sikha from the Rebbe. He says like this: you know what was made out of copper in the Beis Hamikdash, in the sanctuary? The foundation, the sockets, which held the beams of the outer courtyard. Now listen to this. There was the courtyard, and then there was the Mishkan proper, right? Now, what was the courtyard made out of? Poles that were in sockets, and on those poles were little pegs that they hung curtains on them, and that formed the courtyard of the sanctuary. Now, in the inside of this courtyard was already the domain of the temple. Outside of that courtyard was not holy. What created the foundation for the separation between the domain of the unholy and the domain of the holy was made out of copper, not out of gold and not out of silver. That means that when you bring a yid that's on the level of copper, and you do a mitzvah with him, and you inspire him, and you bring him into your Beis Hamikdash, that becomes the foundation of your holy domain. And for your holy domain and your temple, where God is going to reside. If you're missing those copper sockets, you got nothing. Huh? But doing mitzvahs is not enough. He's saying over here that you have to do mitzvahs. You have to work with the copper of the world and the copper of the Jewish people. You have to go inspire a yid, and that becomes the foundation of your Beis Hamikdash. When you work with a yid and you turn him around, that becomes the foundation of your own mikdash where God resides in your life. A powerful concept.
Thinking by doing this by online, bringing it into
Yeah, it's all about that.
Like many people say,
That's the avodah of making the Beis Hamikdash for God in this world. To take the copper of the world and make it that very copper the foundation for the domain of holiness.